In this session, we're going to discuss a number of entitlement best practices. All parties in the entitlement definition process need to be clearly identified. There should be a clear designated responsibility for entitlement rule approval and sign-off. A process to manage changes to entitlement rules should be clearly defined. A frequency or trigger for auditing entitlement rules should be clearly defined. The entitlement process should focus on producing entitlement rules that are simple and designed using the principle of least privilege. The entitlement process should focus on producing entitlement rules that minimize the exposure of identity or avoid the need to consume identity. Temporary attributes such as geolocation need real-time attribute checking to revalidate entitlement rules during the life cycle of a transaction. Entitlement rules should be triggered by a process or an attempt to initiate a process, for example, a need to transfer money out of an environment. Implementers of entitlement rules should ensure bidirectional trust for optimal security. The design of entitlement rules should support the delegation of access by a secondary entity to some but not necessarily all. The design of entitlement should take into account the jurisdiction of the organization, the systems, as well as the entities involved, and also the possibility of legal seizure of access. Legal advice must always be taken prior to implementing any seizure of access. Where possible, tools should be used to manage entitlement and ensure that the interpretation of entitlement rules meets business as well as regulatory requirements. Each identity or attribute that is defined in the entitlement process should match the level of trust required. All sources of identity and attributes should provide organizational identity. All attributes should be validated as source or as close to the source as is possible. Attributes, when used correctly, should always lead to the right conclusion. Identity and attributes should have the required standard of data quality and of a governance mechanism. Reputational trust can be an important and relevant source of trust. Small value transactions can be used to increase transactional trust, which could then be defrauded on subsequent larger value transactions.